Hey guys, tonight we are going on a journey, a rather difficult one, back to a time and place that feels both ancient and uncomfortably modern. We're going to step into the shoes of a young woman whose life story became a dark mirror, reflecting Europe's ugliest fascinations. Her name was Saartjie Baartman, though the world would come to know her by a cruel and dehumanizing stage name. We're going to start at the very beginning, long before the sideshow posters and the cold stares of scientists. Honestly, given the harsh realities of the era, you'd be lucky to survive the first day. But tonight, you're not just a visitor, you are her. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment and let me know what city you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you are aware of is the sun. It's not the pale, distant sun of Europe, it's a living thing. A warm hand on your back as you walk. You are in the Gamtoos River Valley, a place you simply know as home. The year is somewhere in the late 1782. But you don't measure time with numbers on a calendar. You measure it in seasons, in the calving of the cattle, in the flowering of the honey-scented fynbos that carpets the hillsides. You are a young girl of the Khoikhoi people. The name others will give your people, Hottentot, is a slur, a clumsy imitation of your language's beautiful clicks, spat out by Dutch sailors who couldn't be bothered to learn. But here, you are simply one of the men of men. The Khoikhoi. Your world is woven from the earth. Your home, a portable, dome-shaped hut called a harrowing, is a masterpiece of engineering, framed with pliant branches and covered in woven reed mats. When the grazing lands grow thin, your entire community can pack up these homes and move with the herds. Life is a gentle, rhythmic migration, following the water and the grass. Your family's wealth isn't counted in gold, but in the fat-tailed sheep and long-horned cattle that graze placidly near the riverbank. You know each animal by its markings, its temper, its place in the herd. They are your inheritance and your responsibility. Your skin, the color of rich ochre, is slick with a mixture of animal fat and fragrant dust. This isn't for decoration, it's your shield against the relentless sun and the dry wind. In the morning, you crush the leaves of the butchu plant between your palms. It's a small, green leaf with a sharp, minty, black-like scent that clings to you all day. It's your perfume, your insect repellent, and your medicine. Your mother taught you which roots to dig for a stomachache and which leaves to chew for a headache. The land is your pharmacy, and you know its secrets intimately. Today, your task is to watch the younger children as they play by the river, their laughter echoing in the vast, quiet landscape. You sit on a sun-warmed rock, your fingers expertly weaving a small basket from river reeds. Your mind is quiet. You worry about a lost lamb from yesterday. You think about the story the elders will tell around the fire tonight, and you wonder if the boy from the neighboring clan will be there. These are the small, important anchors of your existence. This life isn't an idyll. There are droughts, predators, and disputes with other groups, like the sand hunters or the zosha farmers further east. But it is a life of profound connection. Your identity is inseparable from your family, your clan, and this specific stretch of earth. Historians, centuries from now, will argue over the precise political structure of your people, whether you were a loose confederation of clans bound by language and custom, or if they were more powerful, centralized chiefdoms that held sway over vast territories. To you, it's much simpler. You know who your chief is. You know the network of kinship that ties you to hundreds of others. And you know the rules. It's a system that has worked for generations. A little-known fact about your people is the significance of music and dance. It's not just for celebration, it's a way of recording history, of settling disputes, of communing with the spiritual world. You have a GRRARA, a musical bow with a quill that you vibrate with your mouth, creating haunting, resonant melodies that seem to carry on the wind. When you play it, you are telling the story of your day, your feelings, your connection to the world around you. As the sun begins its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, you call the children and gather your things. The air grows cooler. The smell of wood smoke drifts from the cluster of huts as evening meals are prepared. You see your father and uncles returning with the herd, their long shadows stretching before them. A sense of deep, unshakable peace settles over the valley. You are safe. You are known. You are home. You have no concept of London or Paris. You cannot imagine a world of cobblestone streets, towering stone buildings, or a sky choked with coal smoke. You do not know that ships larger than any animal you've ever seen are sailing the oceans, carrying men with pale skin and insatiable appetites. You don't know that your body, your very existence, will one day be debated in courtrooms and dissected in lecture halls. Tonight, you are just a girl, sitting by a fire under a blanket of stars so bright they feel close enough to touch. You listen to the clicks and soft tones of your language, a sound as comforting as your own heartbeat. You are entirely, blissfully unaware that on the distant horizon, a world is coming that will steal all of this from you, and it's coming soon. The rhythm of your days continues, but a subtle dissonance has crept in, a note played slightly out of tune. It begins as a rumor, carried by travelers from other clans who have ventured closer to the Great Bay in the south. They speak of men with skin the color of curdled milk, who arrived on floating white-winged birds. They speak of strange gifts and even stranger demands. The elders listen, their faces impassive, but you see a new tension in the lines around their eyes. Your world, once boundless, now feels like it has an edge, a place where the familiar gives way to something unknown and unsettling. Then one afternoon, you see it for yourself. It's not a grand arrival, no fleet of ships on a river. It's far more mundane, and therefore more insidious. It's a smudge of dust on the horizon, a slow-moving cloud where there should be none. The smudge resolves itself into a large, cumbersome wooden cart, a wagon, pulled by a long team of tired-looking oxen. Beside it, a few men on horseback. They don't look like any people you know. They are tall and broad, encased and heavy, sweat-stained clothing despite the heat. Their faces, peeking out from under wide-brimmed hats, are pale and blistered by the sun you are so accustomed to. They carry long, polished sticks of wood and metal, their guns. Their approach is slow, deliberate, and confident. They are not asking for permission to be here, they are simply arriving. Your people gather, not with weapons, but with a cautious curiosity that has been your way for generations. Hospitality is a sacred duty. Your chief steps forward, his posture proud and welcoming. The strangers dismount. Their language is a collection of rough, gravelly sounds, completely unlike the fluid, clicking cadence of your own tongue. A man from a neighboring clan, who has had more contact with these newcomers, acts as a halting translator. They call themselves Boers farmers. They say they are looking for fresh grazing land for their animals. They don't ask to use the land they speak as if it is a foregone conclusion. They offer gifts: a small bag of tobacco, a string of brightly colored glass beads, and a bottle of dark, potent liquid they call brandy. In return, they motion towards your cattle. Here lies a misunderstanding that will cost your people everything. For you, cattle are life, family, and status. For them, cattle are a commodity. For you, the land is a shared, sacred entity that you move through. For them, land is a possession, something to be claimed, fenced, and owned forever. This fundamental difference in worldview is a chasm you cannot yet see. The elders, adhering to the customs of trade and goodwill, agree to an exchange. A few of your sheep and a young bull are traded for the trinkets and the bottle of burning liquid. The strangers smile. It's a thin, brittle smile that doesn't reach their pale eyes. Historians looking back at this period argue endlessly about this moment. Was it a negotiation, however lopsided, where both sides believed they were getting the better deal, or was it an invasion from the very first handshake? A slow-motion conquest masked by the niceties of trade. The truth, as you experience it, is somewhere in the murky middle. The Boers don't leave. They unhitch their oxen and set up a permanent camp near the river, at the very spot where your people have watered their herds for generations. They felt these trees that have stood for an age and begin constructing a crude but solid house of mud and timber. They have put down roots in your land, and their roots are greedy. A little known detail of this era is the speed with which the Khoikhoi economy was dismantled. Your wealth, so carefully accumulated in livestock, was decimated by these unequal trades. The Boers offered addictive substances like tobacco and alcohol, creating a dependency that ensured they always had the upper hand. A herd built over a lifetime could be lost in a season of bad trade. Soon, their cattle are competing with yours for the best grass. When your father tries to lead his herd to the river, one of the Boers shouts at him, waving his gun. The translator explains that this part of the river now belongs to them. The concept is absurd to you. How can anyone own a river? It's like owning the rain or the sky. But the gun in the man's hand is not absurd. It is terrifyingly real. The friction grows. A cow wanders onto the Boers' claimed land and is shot. A dispute over a water source ends with threats. The stranger's presence, once a curiosity, has become a heavy, oppressive weight. They are not visitors, they are occupiers. And you are beginning to understand that you are no longer safe in your own home. The easy peace of the valley has been shattered, replaced by a constant, low thrum of anxiety. You watch your father's face grow weary. You see the elders in long, somber discussions that end with no solutions. The old ways, the old rules of diplomacy and respect, are useless against these men. They have a different set of rules, backed by gunpowder and an unshakable belief in their own superiority. The world you were born into is dissolving like a sand castle in the tide, and you, a young girl on the cusp of womanhood, are caught in the undertow, being pulled relentlessly toward a future you cannot possibly imagine. The horizon no longer promises a new day, it brings only strangers. The slow erosion of your world accelerates into a landslide. The grass becomes scarcer, the river more contentious. The Boers' heads swell while yours dwindle. The final blow comes not as a single event, but as a slow, grinding inevitability. With your family's herd decimated through lopsided trades and disease spread from the newcomers' livestock, your father is left with an impossible choice: starvation or servitude. He does what he must to ensure his family survives. He becomes a laborer on the very land that was once his to roam freely. You now live on the periphery of the Boer farm, in a small, rough hut, a pale imitation of your old Haruoimis. Your life is no longer your own. It is dictated by the rhythms of their farm, not the seasons. You rise before the sun to milk their cows. You work in their fields under the same sun that once felt like a blessing, and you collapse into sleep long after the stars have appeared. The fragrant butcher and protective animal fat have been replaced by the smell of sweat, soil, and servitude. Your name, your real name, is Saartjie, but they rarely use it. You are often just girl or addressed with a grunt. Your language, once the sound of home, is now spoken only in whispers with your family. Away from the ears of your masters, you are forced to learn their language, Dutch, a language that feels clumsy and harsh in your mouth. And it is here, in this cage of circumstance, that you meet him, Hendrik Arrest. He is not like the other Boers. He is a free black man, a term that carries a universe of complexity. He had once been enslaved himself, but had somehow gained his freedom and now works for Peter Arrest, the Boer who owns this farm, as a kind of foreman. Some historians suggest Hendrik was Peter's brother, a product of the common but rarely acknowledged unions between colonists and local women. But the exact nature of their relationship is lost to the messy, unwritten records of the frontier. Hendrik is different. He moves with a confidence the other laborers lack. He speaks Dutch fluently. But when he speaks to you, His eyes hold a flicker of something other than command. Is it recognition, pity? You can't be sure. He is a man caught between two worlds, not truly belonging to either. He is not a master, but he holds power over you. He is not one of your people, but he is not one of them either. He notices you, while other men see only a laborer, a pair of hands. He seems to see you. He notices the way you care for the animals, a skill inherited from generations of herders. He notices your weariness at the end of the day. He brings you a small piece of fruit he saved from the main house, a tiny gesture, but in a world of deprivation, it feels monumental. Your relationship with him is a fraught and complicated thing. Is it love? Is it a strategic alliance in a world where you have no power? Is it a form of survival? Maybe it is all three. He offers you a measure of protection. A word from him can spare you the harshest tasks. A look from him can deter the unwanted advances of other men. In return, you offer him companionship, a connection to the world he was born into but has drifted away from. You become his partner, in the loosest sense of the word. You have a child together, a baby who dies in infancy, a common and heartbreaking tragedy in this harsh new life. A bizarre and little-known aspect of frontier life was the creation of these new, fragile family units. Traditional Khoikhoi social structures were so thoroughly dismantled that people clung to whatever human connection they could find. These relationships, like yours with Hendrik, were born of trauma and necessity, a desperate attempt to build something new from the wreckage of the old. The academic debate here centers on your agency. To what degree was this a choice in a situation of such profound power imbalance? Can a woman in your position really consent to a relationship, or is it simply the most logical path? The best of a series of terrible options. You don't think in these abstract terms. You think of the small kindness, the relative safety, the human warmth in a cold, hostile world. Hendrik represents a sliver of hope, a potential escape. He is not a simple man. He is ambitious. He has seen the wealth the Boers accumulate, and he wants a piece of it. He sees that the world is changing, and the old ways of the Khoikhoi are gone forever. The future, he believes, lies with the Europeans. He begins to fill your head with stories, not of your ancestors, but of a place called Europe, a place of unimaginable wealth, where people pay money just to see interesting things. He looks at you, at your body, and he sees more than just the woman he shares his life with. Your physique is typical of many Khoikhoi women, with the characteristic STE to PGIA large deposits of fat on the buttocks. To your people, this is a sign of beauty, of health and fertility. To the European eye, conditioned by a different aesthetic, it is an object of intense, almost scientific curiosity. Hendrik sees this, and in the greedy, curious stares at the visiting Boers, he sees an opportunity. He starts to talk about a trip to London. He paints a picture of a grand adventure, a way to make enough money to come back into a life of ease, to buy your own farm, to reclaim a piece of the world that was stolen from you. The promise is a glittering lure, dangling in the bleakness of your reality. It sounds like a fairy tale, both terrifying and intoxicating. It is a promise whispered in the dark of your small hut, a promise that will become the bars of a new, more terrible cage. The idea, once planted, begins to grow, a strange and thorny vine in the barren soil of your life. Hendrik's whispers of London become more frequent, more detailed. He speaks with a feverish excitement. His eyes alight with the vision of gold coins and a triumphant return. He is a gambler, and he is ready to stake everything on you. To make his plan a reality, he needs a partner, a white man to navigate the European world. He finds one in his own boss, Peter Caesaress. The two of them, the Bullsheimer and the three blacks woman, form an unlikely and predatory alliance. They see you not as a person, but as a potential enterprise, a unique commodity to be marketed. One evening, they sit you down. Peter does most of the talking, his Dutch slow and deliberate, as if explaining something to a child. Hendrik sits beside him, translating, adding his own persuasive flourishes. This is the moment the deal is presented to you. The devil's handshake disguised as a golden opportunity. They unroll a piece of paper. A contract. It's covered in dense, spittery script that you cannot read. Even if you could, the legal language would be impenetrable. Peter points to different lines, explaining the terms, his words filtered through Hendrik's eager voice. The promise is this: you will travel with them to England, and also to Ireland, for a short time. You will exhibit yourself. You will show European audiences the unique way your people live. You will dance, play your music, and they will pay to see you. It will be a scientific and educational endeavor. They insist. They use words like dignity and respect. In exchange for this, you will receive a portion of the profits. The amount is a vague and shimmering number that sounds impossibly large. Enough to make you a rich woman. Enough to come home and be independent forever. The contract, they say, is for a period of 5 years, after which you will be free to return, with your fortune in hand. They even promise that a portion of your earnings will be sent back to your family here. It's a masterful performance, hitting every one of your vulnerabilities: your desire for a better life, your loyalty to your family, and your trust in Hendrik, the one man who has shown you a semblance of kindness. You look from Peter's impassive face to Hendrik's pleading one. The idea is frightening. To leave the only land you have ever known, to cross an ocean you have only heard stories about, to stand before crowds of strangers. It's terrifying. But what is your alternative? A lifetime of servitude on this farm, watching your people fade into poverty and despair. Historians still debate this moment with intensity. Was Saartjie a willing participant? A desperate woman making a calculated risk, or was she coerced? A victim of a sophisticated deception, she couldn't possibly have understood the legal concept of undue influence. Seems custom-made for this situation. You are uneducated. You cannot read the document you are being asked to agree to. And you are entirely dependent on the very men who are proposing the deal. Your signature on that contract would never hold up in a modern court. But this is the early 19th century, almost alpha for a confrontier. What's rarely mentioned is the specific context of Khoikhoi women at the time. Due to the wars and social collapse, many women were in incredibly vulnerable positions, often forced into coercive relationships with colonists or left with no means of support. For a woman in your position, Hendrik's plan, however risky, might have seemed like the only option that offered any agency at all. It was a choice between a slow death of the spirit here, or a roll of the dice on a fantastical future. You hesitate. You ask questions. Will you be safe? Will they hurt you? Will you truly be allowed to come home? They offer reassurances. A cascade of soothing lies. Of course, you will be safe. We will be with you the whole time. This is your chance. Saartjie, our chance. Hendrik takes your hand. His touch is warm, familiar. You look into his eyes and choose to believe him. You choose to believe in the dream because the reality is unbearable. You cannot write your name, so you make a mark where Peter shows you. A small, simple cross, with dead mark. You signed away your life. You have no idea what you have truly agreed to. You don't know that the exhibition will be a degrading spectacle. You don't know that the promise of wealth is a fiction. You don't know that the journey home is a lie. In that moment, you feel a flicker of something that might be hope. You imagine returning to the Gamtoos Valley, not as a servant, but as a woman of means. You imagine freeing your family from their bondage. This vision is what you cling to. It is the anesthetic that numbs the fear and the deep, instinctual sense that you are making a terrible mistake. The handshake is done. Peter rolls up the contract, a satisfied look on his face. Hendrik squeezes your shoulder, a gesture of shared victory. You are now officially part of their venture. You are no longer just Saartjie. You are an investment. You are cargo in waiting, and soon, you will be on your way to a world that is not ready for you, and for which you are entirely unprepared. The cage is being built, and you have just willingly stepped inside. The days following the handshake are a blur of hurried preparations. You are being uprooted, torn from the red earth of your homeland with a brutal finality. Saying goodbye is not a single, clean act. It's a series of painful little tears. You say goodbye to your family, who look at you with a mixture of fear, and confusion. They cannot comprehend the place you are going to. To them, London is a word without meaning, a place beyond the veil of the known world. You promise to return, a rich woman, and rescue them. The words feel hollow even as you say them. You say goodbye to the landscape itself. You take a final walk along what's left of your ancestral lands, breathing in the scent of the dust and the fynbos. You watch the sun set over the familiar hills, trying to burn the image into your memory. This sky, this light, this air, you are leaving it all. The journey to the coast is arduous. You travel in the same kind of hulking ox wagon that first brought the bulls to your valley. For days, you are jolted and rattled over rough tracks, moving slowly away from everything you have ever known. The landscape changes. The plants become unfamiliar. The air begins to smell of salt. And then you see it. The ocean. It is nothing like the stories. It is a monster. A vast, grey, churning entity that stretches to the end of the world. It hears and breathes, and its roar is a constant, deafening thunder. You have never felt so small, so insignificant. The sheer, terrifying scale of it makes your stomach clench. You are supposed to cross that in a wooden boat. The idea is madness. The port of Cape Town is a chaotic assault on the senses. It's a riot of languages: Dutch, English, German, French, social, and the languages of the East all competing in a noisy stir. The smells are overwhelming: tar, rope, rotting fish, unwashed bodies, and the strange, sweet smell of imported spices. Everywhere you look, there are people rushing, shouting, carrying heavy loads. This is the heart of the colonial machine, the pump that circulates people and goods between Europe and its sprawling territories. Dieu, Hendrik, and Peter are just more grist for its mill. A fascinating and often overlooked aspect of this moment is that Cape Town was a profoundly cosmopolitan place. While your upcountry life was defined by the stark binary of Khoikhoi and Boer, the port was a complex mix of European sailors, colonial officials, enslaved people from Indonesia and Madagascar, and local African peoples, all living in a tense, highly stratified society. You are not the only person here whose life has been shattered and remade by global forces. You are hurried onto the ship. It's a British vessel, a small, cramped merchant ship that smells of damp wood and bilge water. Your quarters are below deck, a dark, airless space that sways with a sickening, relentless rhythm. There is no privacy, no escape from the groans of the ship's timbers in the constant, unnerving motion. As the ship pulls away from the dock, you watch the flat top of Table Mountain, the last piece of your continent, shrink until it is just a speck. And then nothing at all. A profound and absolute loneliness washes over you. Hendrik is with you, but even he seems small and frightened in the face of the endless water. He is no longer the confident man from the farm. He is as adrift as you are. The voyage is a special kind of misery. The food is hardtack biscuits and salted meat, a diet that leaves your mouths sore and your body weak. The water is stale. Storms rack the ship, tossing it about like a child's toy. During these tempests, you huddle in the dark, listening to the shrieks of the wind and the crash of waves against the hull, certain that this wooden shell will be splintered and you will be swallowed by the angry sea. But it's the sheer monotony that grinds you down. Day after day, week after week, there is nothing to see but the grey-blue circle of the horizon. It's a world made entirely of salt water and sky. There is no earth to ground you, no familiar plants or animals. Your entire sensory world has been wiped clean and replaced with this sterile, hostile environment. Historians often focus on the spectacle you became in London, but they sometimes gloss over the trauma of the journey itself. The Middle Passage is rightly remembered as a horror for the millions of enslaved Africans forced across the Atlantic, But even for a passenger like you, the voyage was a deeply disorienting and dehumanizing experience. It was a deliberate severing of all ties to home and identity, a process designed to make you more malleable, more dependent on your captors. There is an ongoing debate about whether the legal distinction between an enslaved person and an indentured traveler like you held any real meaning once you were on that ship, trapped in the middle of the ocean. You lose track of time. You sleep. You wake. You feel sick. You stare at the wooden planks above your bunk. You barely speak. Hendrik tries to keep your spirits up, talking about the riches that await. But his words are thin comfort against the vast, empty reality of the ocean. You are suspended between two worlds, belonging to neither. The girl from the Gamtoos Valley is gone. The woman who will arrive in London has not yet been formed. You are in a state of terrifying limbo, a human being remade into cargo, floating across a saltwater world that is trying to erase you. After what feels like an eternity, the water changes color, from a deep, menacing blue-gray to a murky, brownish green. The air grows colder, damper, and carries a strange new smell, a mix of coal smoke, damp earth, and something metallic. Other ships appear, their sails like dirty ghosts in the perpetual mist. Lone, when it finally emerges from the fog, is not the vibrant red earth of home but a pale, washed-out strip of grey and green. You have arrived. Docking in London is an experience of controlled chaos that makes Cape Town look like a sleepy village. The River Thames is a thick, brown soup, clogged with ships from every corner of the globe. The noise is a physical force, the clang of bells, the shouts of sailors, the rumble of iron-wheeled carts on cobblestones. The distant, constant hum of a million people. It presses in on you, overwhelming your senses. As you step onto the quay, the first thing that hits you is the cold. It's a damp, biting cold that seeps into your bones. A stark contrast to the dry heat you've known your whole life. The clothes you wore on the farm are laughably inadequate. You shiver, pulling your thin shawl tighter around your shoulders. And then there's the sky. Or rather, the lack of it. A low, permanent ceiling of smoke and fog hangs over the city, staining the grand stone buildings a uniform sooty grey. The sun is a pale, sickly wafer, barely visible through the haze. You are used to a sky that is a vast blue dome. This feels like being trapped in a dirty jar. Hendrik and Peter guide you through the teeming streets. It's a vision of a world you couldn't have imagined in your wildest dreams or nightmares. The buildings are colossal, multi-story behemoths that block out the sky, packed so tightly together they seem to lean on one another. The streets are a river of mud, refuse, and horse manure, navigated by an endless stream of people. And the people, so many people, they are a torrent of pale faces, all rushing, all intent on some purpose you can't fathom. Their expressions are closed, grim. No one makes eye contact. In your village, you knew everyone here. You are utterly anonymous, a strange speck in a monstrous, indifferent crowd. Their stares, when they do fall upon you, are quick and dismissive, or worse, lingering and filled with a cold curiosity. They see your dark skin, your unfamiliar features, and you are instantly categorized as other. A little-known fact about early 19th century London is its sheer filth. The city was a public health disaster waiting to happen. There was no centralized sewage system, so human and animal waste was often simply thrown into the streets or cesspits, festering and contaminating the water supply. The air quality, thanks to the unregulated burning of soft coal, was atrocious, leading to chronic respiratory illnesses for its inhabitants. The pea super fogs, thick, yellow, and toxic, were a legendary and deadly feature of London life. You are not just in a new city, you are in a profoundly unhealthy environment. Peter has arranged lodgings in a part of the city that is noisy and cheap. You are led up a narrow, rickety staircase to a small, dark room. It has one small window that looks out onto a brick wall. The air is stale, This tiny, gold box is to be your new home. The boundless horizon of your homeland has been replaced by four walls. The psychological impact of this transition is something historians are still trying to fully grasp. How does a person whose entire sense of self is tied to the land, to open space, and to a tight-knit community, cope with being dropped into the heart of the world's largest, most industrialized, and most alienating metropolis? The concept of culture shock is wholly inadequate to describe the violent dislocation you are experiencing. It's a sensory and spiritual amputation. Hendrik tries to be reassuring, but he too is clearly overwhelmed. He is a man of the open frontier, and this dense, suffocating city is as alien to him as it is to you. Only Peter seems at ease, striding through the chaos with a sense of purpose. This is his world, the world of commerce and capital, and he is here to do business. In the first few days, you barely leave the room. The noise, the smells, the sheer foreignness of it all are paralyzing. You are an exhibit before you even step onto a stage. The landlord's children peek at you through the cracked open door. People on the street stop and stare. You feel their eyes on you like a physical touch, a constant, low-level violation. Hendrik and Peter begin their preparations. They are not looking for a concert hall or an lecture theater. They are looking for a venue that caters to a specific, and less savory, kind of entertainment. They are negotiating with showmen, with the purveyors of curiosities and freak shows. The scientific and educational veneer they sold you back on the farm is already beginning to peel away, revealing the grimy reality underneath. You are not an ambassador for your people. You are a product, and they are finding the right marketplace to sell you in. You sit by the grimy window, looking at the brick wall, and you think of the Gamtoos River. You try to recall the exact shade of the sky at dusk, the feel of the sun on your skin, the sound of your language. These memories are all you have left of the person you once were. They are becoming faint, dreamlike. The smoke-filled, noisy reality of London is all too real. And it is slowly, inexorably, beginning to remake you into someone else, someone you do not recognize. The transformation begins in earnest. Hendrik and Peter have secured a venue, a place that specializes in popular entertainment for the masses. Before you can be presented to the London public, you must be molded into the product they intend to sell. This is not about authenticity, it is about fulfilling the grotesque fantasies of your audience. You are to become a character, a living caricature of a savage. It starts with the clothes, or rather, the lack of them. Back home, you wore soft leather aprons and Caros's cloaks made of animal skin. Here, they present you with a new costume. It is a tight-fitting, skin-colored garment, designed to give the illusion of near nudity while still technically covering you. It is meant to highlight your figure, to exaggerate the very features they plan to market. Over this, they add a few strategically placed, primitive-looking ornaments, some beads, a few feathers, and a thin, coarse loincloth. The costume is degrading. It is cold, revealing, and utterly alien. It is not the clothing of your people, it is a fantasy woven from the prejudices of European minds. When you first put it on, you feel a profound sense of shame. You are being stripped not just of your clothes, but of your dignity. You are being turned into a living object for public consumption. Next comes the performance. Hendrik, guided by Peter's commercial instincts, begins to coach you. You must forget the quiet dignity of your people. You must act wild. He instructs you to make sudden, jerky movements, to whoop and cry out in ways you never would have at home. He asks you to smoke a long-stemmed pipe, not for pleasure, but as a pro, puffing on it aggressively. They want you to play the GRAA, your musical bow, but they don't want the haunting, soulful melodies you know. They want you to play it loudly, erratically, to make strange and exotic sounds. The music that was once a form of personal expression, a way to tell your story, is being twisted into a parody. One of the most debated aspects of your performance is the language. You are encouraged to speak, but not incoherent sentences. You are to utter clicks and sounds from your language, taken out of context, to sound guttural and primitive to the English ear. Your beautiful, complex language, the vehicle of your culture's history and poetry, is reduced to meaningless noise for the amusement of a crowd. This process is a daily ritual of psychological dismantling. Each instruction, each space of the costume, each forced gesture, chips away at your sense of self. Saartjie, the woman from the Gamtoos Valley, is being systematically erased and replaced by the Hottentot Venus, a fictional creature born of ignorance and greed. A little known but poignant detail from this period comes from the few accounts of those who tried to genuinely communicate with you. They noted that in rare, unguarded moments, your demeanor was gentle, quiet, and melancholic. This stands in stark contrast to the boisterous, savage character you were forced to play on stage. This gap between the public performance and the private person reveals the immense psychological labor you were forced to perform every single day. You resist. You argue with Hendrik. You cry. You refuse to wear the costume or perform the ridiculous acts. But what power do you have? You are in a foreign country, completely dependent on him, on Peter. When you refuse, Hendrik's demeanor changes. The kindness he once showed you on the farm is replaced with a sharp impatience. He reminds you of the contract, of the money, of the promise to go home. He alternates between coercion and cajoling, a confusing mix of threats and reassurances that keeps you off balance. He is your captor and your only confidant, a terribly toxic combination. The name itself, the Hottentot Venus, is a cruel irony. Hottentot, as you now fully understand, is a derogatory term for your people, and Venus, the Roman goddess of love and beauty, is used here with a heavy, leering sarcasm. It's a name designed to be sensational, to promise a spectacle that is both exotic and titillating. It reduces you to two things: a savage specimen and an object of morbid sexual curiosity. Historians argue about Hendrik's role in this. Was he a cold, calculating monster from the start, or was he a man corrupted by the promise of wealth, gradually shedding his humanity as he became more enmeshed in the dehumanizing world of London's show business? Perhaps he was both. A complex figure who was himself a victim of the colonial system, but who chose to perpetuate that system's cruelty upon you. It's a question without a simple answer. The rehearsals take place in the cold, dingy room that serves as both your home and your prison. Peter occasionally comes to watch, a silent, judgmental presence in the corner, nodding or shaking his head as Hendrik puts you through your paces. He is the director, the mastermind. Hendrik is the handler. You are the animal being trained for the circus. Finally, they deem you ready. The posters have been printed, plastered on walls around the city. They feature a lurid, exaggerated drawing of you, promising a glimpse of the most correct and perfect specimen of that race of people. The day of your first public appearance is set. The wild savage is born. And you, Saartjie, feel yourself disappearing completely inside this monstrous creation. You are terrified, not of the crowd, but of losing the last, fragile pieces of yourself. The venue is at 225 Piccadilly, a fashionable and bustling street in the heart of London. But your stage is not in a grand theatre. It's in the Egyptian Hall, a museum-like building famous for its collection of curiosities and freak exhibits. This is the context in which you are presented to the public, not as a performer, not as a cultural ambassador, but as another strange object to be gawked at. Somewhere between a taxidermied animal and a two-headed calf. The night of your debut, your stomach is a knot of ice. Hendrik fusses with your costume, adjusting a feather, tightening a strap. His hands are clammy. He is nervous too, but his is the nervousness of a gambler placing his biggest bet. Yours is the terror of a soul about to be laid bare. He gives you a swig of brandy from a flask. The liquid burns a trail down your throat, a false warmth that does little to quell the shaking in your hands. Just remember what we practiced. He mutters, his voice tight. Ben, you are pushed from the dim backstage area into the light. The light is the first shock. It's not the soft glow of a campfire or the gentle light of the moon. It's the harsh, flickering glare of oil lamps, arranged to illuminate you completely. They are hot, and they smell of burning grease. The light is so bright it's hard to see the audience at first. All you can see are rows of shadowy forms, a faceless monster in the dark. Then your eyes adjust, and you see them, faces, hundreds of them, men, women, even some children, all staring at you with an intensity that feels like a physical blow. Their faces are a mixture of emotions, undisguised curiosity, clinical detachment, amusement, and something else alluring. Predatory gaze that makes your skin crawl. They are not seeing a person. They are seeing a phenomenon. Baartman, the showman, stands to the side, acting as the master of ceremonies. He bellows a prepared speech, full of sensational lies and pseudo-scientific jargon. He calls you a savage from the lowest rungs of humanity. He describes your homeland as a brutal wilderness. He points to you with a long stick, as if you were a map or an animal in a cage. Behold, he cries, the Hottentot Venus. At his command, you begin your performance. You walk around the small, raised platform. You smoke the pipe. You make the strange, disconnected sounds with your tongue that they have taught you. You pick up your GRI and play the jive, meaningless notes. Each movement feels stiff, artificial, a betrayal of yourself. The crowd reacts with murmurs, laughter, and shouted comments you can't understand. Hendrik stands in the wings, a shadowy figure, giving you sharp, subtle signals: turn this way, move that way. The showman encourages the audience to get a closer look. For an extra fee, they can. He prods you with his stick, forcing you to turn around so they can get a better view of your buttocks, the feature they have all come to see. The humiliation is a hot, suffocating wave. You feel like an insect pinned to a board. A particularly disturbing and often forgotten detail of these shows was the active participation of the audience. They weren't just passive viewers. They were invited to poke and prod. Accounts from the time describe men paying extra to touch you, to feel your body as if to confirm you were real. This violation, crossing the line from looking to touch you, was a routine part of the spectacle. The academic world still grapples with how to categorize this event. Was it theater? Was it a human zoo? Was it a form of prostitution? It was a vile cocktail of all three, mixed with the legitimizing veneer of 19th century race science. You were simultaneously an object of scientific inquiry, a freak show attraction, and a source of prurient entertainment. You get through it. You don't know how, but you do. You move. You play. You endure. You retreat into a small, hard corner of your mind, a place they cannot touch. You think of the Gamtoos River, of your mother's face, of the feel of the sun. You detach yourself from the body that is being displayed and violated on the stage. It is the only way to survive. Finally, it's over. The showman gives his final flourish. The curtain falls, and you are hustled back into the dim, cold backstage area. You are trembling, drenched in a cold sweat. The brandy has worn off, leaving only a sour taste in your mouth. Hendrik claps you on the back. You were wonderful, he says, his face flushed with success. He is counting a pile of coins, the sound of them clinking together sharpened doubly in the silence. He sees your face, your tears, and his expression softens for a moment. It will get easier, he says, his voice losing its harsh edge. Think of the money, Saartjie. Think of going home. But the promise feels more distant than ever. Home feels like a dream from another life. This stage, these lights, these staring eyes, this is your reality now. You have survived your first show, but you know, with a dreadful certainty, that you will have to do it all over again tomorrow, on the next day, and the day after that. The cage is no longer just a room, it's this stage. And every night, they will open the door and push you into the glare of 1,000 hungry eyes. The days blur into a miserable routine. Every evening, you are put on display. The crowds keep coming, drawn by the sensationalist posters and morbid word of mouth. The clinking of coins into Hendrik's and Peter's pockets is the soundtrack to your degradation. The brandy before each show becomes a necessity, a bitter medicine to numb the sharp edges of your reality. You exist in a fog of alcohol, shame, and exhaustion, but you are not entirely alone in the vast, indifferent city of London. Your spectacle, so public and so shocking, has not gone unnoticed. Whispers about the Hottentot Venus reach a group of people who are fighting a different kind of battle in the streets and courtrooms of the city, the abolitionists. This is a pivotal moment in British history. The slave trade had been abolished in the British Empire just a few years earlier, in 1807. However, the institution of slavery itself was still legal in the colonies, and the fight to end it was far from over. This movement was led by deeply religious and passionate individuals who saw slavery and the exploitation of non-European peoples as a profound moral sin. Your case lands on the desk of the African Institution, a society founded by prominent abolitionists like William Wilberforce and Zachary Macaulay. To them, your situation looks dangerously like slavery. Here is a woman from Africa, exhibited for profit, seemingly against her will, in the capital of the so-called free world. It is a flagrant violation of the very principles they have fought so hard for. One day, a different kind of visitor comes to see you. He doesn't come during the show. He comes to your lodgings, accompanied by a translator. His name is Zachary Macaulay. He is a stern, serious man with piercing eyes that seem to see right through the fog of your despair. He is not here to gawk or to be entertained. He is here to help. He speaks to you quietly, respectfully. He asks you questions through the translator. Are you here of your own free will? Are you being held captive? Do you wish to return home? This is the first time since you left Africa that anyone has asked you these questions with genuine concern. At first, you are wary. You have been betrayed by promises before. Hendrik is hovering nearby, his presence a heavy weight in the small room. He answers for you, insisting you are happy, that you are his partner, that this is all a legitimate business arrangement. He shows Macaulay the contract, the piece of paper with your cross on it. But Macaulay is persistent. He sees the fear in your eyes, the way you flinch when Hendrik speaks. He and his allies from the African Institution decide to act. They see your case as a crucial test of the new anti-slave trade laws. If they can prove that you were brought to England for the purpose of being used and exploited, it would be a form of illegal trafficking. They decide to take your case to court. A little-known detail is the sheer logistical effort the abolitionists undertook. They hired lawyers, gathered witnesses who had seen your degrading show, and prepared a legal strategy. This wasn't just a simple act of charity, it was a full-blown legal and publicity campaign. They saw you not just as an individual to be rescued, but as a symbol in their larger fight against racial exploitation. The historical debate here is complex. The abolitionists were, without question, on the side of good. They were your only hope. Yet, their worldview was also a product of their time. They saw you as a victim to be saved, a helpless heathen to be rescued by righteous Christian Englishmen. They fought for your legal rights, but they may not have fully seen you as an equal. In the battle over your body, you were once again at risk of becoming a pawn, this time in a moral crusade rather than a commercial enterprise. Your own voice, your own complex desires, could easily get lost in the legal battle being waged in your name. Hendrik is furious and terrified. He and Peter are served with legal papers. They are to appear in the court of King's Bench. They could lose everything. They could even face prison. Their anger and fear are directed at you. Hendrik's tone becomes harsher. He accuses you of betrayal. They will send you back with nothing. He hisses, I am the only one who can make you rich. Do you want to go back to being a servant? You are caught in the middle of a storm you did not create. On one side are Hendrik and Peter, your captors, who hold the key to the only future they have allowed you to imagine. On the other side are the abolitionists, powerful strangers who promise freedom, but a freedom you can't quite grasp. What does it mean? Would they really just send you home, or would you be trading one form of dependency for another? The pressure is immense. Hendrik drills you on what to say. He tells you to lie, to say you are happy, to insist this is all your own choice. He reminds you that he is the only person you can trust, playing on the fragile bond that still exists between you. For the first time in a long time, a crack appears in the wall of your despair, a flicker of possibility. These serious men in their dark coats have offered you a lifeline. The question is, are you brave enough to grab it, and if you do, what will happen next? The low, quiet whisper of Loungil Yang Zhi conscience has finally found you in the smoky heart of London. The question is whether its voice is strong enough to be heard over the noise of your fear and Hendrik's threats. The day you go to court is cold and grey, a typical London day. You are escorted to the courthouse. A grand, intimidating building of cold stone. You have never been in such a place. The air inside is hushed and smells of old paper, wax, and dust. Men in dark robes and white wigs rush past, speaking in a clipped, formal English that is even more impenetrable than the language you hear on the streets. You are not on trial. You are the subject of the hearing. The case is brought by the African institution, represented by their lawyers, against Hendrik C's arrest and Peter C's arrest. The legal question is whether your contract is valid and whether your exhibition constitutes a violation of the Slave Trade Act. In essence, they are asking the court, is this woman a free agent, or is she, for all intents and purposes, a slave? You are brought into a large, panelled room. High above, a judge sits, looking down at the proceedings. He is a figure of immense and distant authority, a symbol of a legal system you cannot comprehend. Lawyers for both sides are present. Zachary Macaulay and his fellow abolitionists are there, their faces set with grim determination. On the other side, Hendrik and Peter sit with their own lawyer, looking nervous and defiant. You are the central piece of evidence, a living, breathing exhibit in a legal theatre. When it is your turn to be questioned, the room falls silent. Everyone turns to look at you. The pressure is suffocating. A translator is provided, a man who knows both Dutch and English. But even through translation, there is a gulf of understanding. The questions are about legal concepts: consent, contract, duress, free will. These are abstract Western ideas. Your understanding of agreement and obligation is rooted in community, in kinship, in spoken promises, not in spittery ink on a piece of paper you cannot read. The abolitionist's lawyer questions you first. He is gentle. He asks about your life in Africa. He asks how you came to be in London. He asks about the performance. Do they force you to do these things? He asks. Are you happy here? You look at Hendrik. He is staring at you, his eyes boring into yours. A silent, powerful command. You remember his threats, his warnings that these men will abandon you. You remember his promises, however faded, of wealth and a return home on your own terms. He is the devil, you know. These abolitionists are a complete unknown. So you lie. I came of my own free will. You hear your voice say, filtered through the translator, Mr. C's is a good man. We are partners. You tell the court that you are not being held against your will. You tell them you are receiving a portion of the profits. You repeat the lines that Hendrik has drilled into you. Why did you do this? This is the question that has puzzled historians for 2 centuries. The most common explanation is fear. You were a victim of what we would now call coercive control. Hendrik was your keeper, and you were completely under his psychological power. To defy him in open court was an act of bravery you simply couldn't muster. This phenomenon, often seen in cases of domestic abuse, is known as Stockholm Syndrome, where a captive develops a psychological alliance with their captor as a survival strategy. But there's another, more subtle interpretation that is a subject of ongoing academic debate. Perhaps your testimony wasn't just born of fear. Perhaps it was a calculated act of agency within an impossible situation. You might have believed that siding with Hendrik was your only realistic path to ever seeing your earnings and getting home. The abolitionists offered freedom. But what did that mean in practical terms, being sent back to South Africa? Penniless. To the same servitude you fled by sticking with Hendrik. You might have felt you were protecting your admittedly slim financial stake in the enterprise. It may have been a desperate gamble, choosing the path that seemed to have the only, however remote, chance of a tangible reward. A fascinating, little-known tidbit from the court proceedings is that you were also interviewed in private, away from Hendrik's intimidating gaze. In this private setting, you reportedly expressed more unhappiness and a desire to go home. But you were still reluctant to formally charge Hendrik with abuse. This contradiction highlights the deep conflict you felt. Your testimony is a blow to the abolitionists' case. They had hoped for a tearful plea for rescue. Instead, they got a woman publicly stating she was a willing participant. Still, the judge is not entirely convinced. He can see the power dynamics at play. He is troubled by the nature of the exhibition, by the clear exploitation, even if you won't name it as such. He hears the evidence from witnesses who describe the degrading spectacle, the prodding with a stick, the leering crowds. He cannot legally declare you a slave, not based on your own testimony, but he cannot let the situation continue as it is. He seeks a compromise. He will not nullify the contract entirely, but he will order it to be rewritten under the court's supervision, with new terms to protect you. And he orders the most degrading parts of the show to cease immediately. The poking, the prodding, the cage, it must all stop. You leave the courtroom in a state of confusion. Who won? The abolitionists feel they have lost their main objective but won a moral victory. Hendrik and Peter are relieved to have avoided a worse fate, but they are now under legal scrutiny, and you are trapped somewhere in between, still bound to Hendrik, but with the dawning awareness that there are other forces at play in this strange, cold country. You spoke, but your true voice was never really heard. The aftermath of the court case is not freedom, but a different kind of bondage. The victory the abolitionists secured on your behalf feels hollow. A legal fiction that changes little about the fundamental reality of your life. The judge's ruling was a well-intentioned but ultimately naive attempt to regulate an inherently abusive situation. A new contract is drawn up by the court's lawyers. It's supposed to be fairer. It stipulates your working hours. It guarantees you a salary, a fixed, small amount, not the vague promise of a share of the profits. It explicitly forbids the most humiliating aspects of the performance, like being poked with a stick or handled by the audience. And it includes a clause that you are to be baptized, a move pushed by the abolitionists who believe that becoming a Christian would afford you greater social and legal protection. On paper, it looks like an improvement. In reality, it's just a more sophisticated set of chains. Hendrik is now legally obligated to pay you, but the amount is paltry compared to the sums he is raking in. The new contract legitimizes the entire enterprise, giving it the stamp of approval from the British legal system. Your exploitation now has a paper trail. You are baptized at a church in Manchester, a city you are taken to after the London controversy makes you less of a novel attraction there. The ceremony is a strange and empty ritual. You are given a new name, Sarah, the English version of Saartjie. You stand in a cold stone church. Water is sprinkled on your head, and men in robes mutter words you don't understand about a god you don't know. The abolitionists see this as a triumph, a soul saved. For you, it's just another performance, another layer of identity being imposed upon you. You are still Saartjie inside, but now you must answer to Sarah. The show goes on, but it's a slightly sanitized version. Hendrik, ever the cunning showman, adapts. He can no longer have you displayed in a cage, so he presents you on a small stage, decorated to look like a native hut. He is your keeper and translator. The performance is less overtly grotesque, but the core of the spectacle remains the same. You are still the Hottentot Venus, the exotic savage from a distant land. The crowd still come to stare, their curiosity and mad. This period is a source of considerable debate among scholars. Some argue that the court case, despite its flaws, was a significant moment. It affirmed that a person of color could not be treated as a mere chattel on British soil and could use the legal system for protection. It set a precedent. Others argue it was a catastrophic failure. By regulating the exploitation instead of ending it, the court effectively sanctioned it. They put a clean shirt on a dirty business. This argument suggests that the legal system was incapable of delivering true justice because it was fundamentally part of the same colonial power structure that enabled your exploitation in the first place. A little-known and heartbreaking part of this new arrangement was your complete isolation. The abolitionists, having won their case and secured your baptism, largely moved on to other causes. They had saved your soul and secured your legal rights. In their view, the daily reality of your life was no longer their primary concern. You were left in the hands of the very man they had fought in court, Hendrik Caesar S. Your brief connection to a world outside the exhibition was severed, leaving you more dependent on him than ever before. The money you are paid is a pittance. Hendrik manages it for you, giving you small amounts for necessities and claiming to be saving the rest for your return journey. You have no real control over your own earnings. You are still trapped. The attention from the London crowds eventually wanes. Novelty is a perishable commodity. Hendrik, his profits dwindling and his legal troubles in England making him nervous, starts looking for a new market. His eyes turn across the English Channel to a country with a different set of laws and a ravenous appetite for the exotic France. The empty victory of the courtroom has led you to a dead end. You have a fair contract, a Christian name, and the theoretical protection of British law, but you are still cold, still lonely, still a prisoner of the stage. The promise of going home has become a cruel joke that Hendrik no longer bothers to tell with much conviction. You are a commodity whose value is falling in London. Unlike any shrewd businessman, Hendrik knows that when one market dries up, you have to find another. He begins making arrangements for another sea voyage, this time a short one, to a city called Paris. You have no say in the matter. The hollow victory has been won, the applause has faded, and the next act of your tragedy is about to begin. The crossing to France is short, but it feels like a journey to an entirely different world. If London was a gloomy giant of industry and commerce, Paris is a city of gilded elegance and casual cruelty. The language is another barrier, a waterfall of musical sounds you can't pass. Your Dutch is useless here, and the little English you've picked up is no better. You are more isolated, more dependent on Hendrik than ever before. But Hendrik's control over you is about to end. He is a small-time operator, a frontier hustler who is out of his depth in the sophisticated and predatory world of Parisian show business. He quickly sells his interest in you to a new master. Your contract, the one so carefully drafted by the British courts, means nothing here. You are sold like a piece of livestock. Your new owner is a man named Rowe. He is not a gambler like Hendrik. He is a professional showman who specializes in exhibiting animals. He has a menagerie, a collection of exotic beasts he displays to the public for a fee. He is a trainer, a man who knows how to make animals perform tricks. With Rowe, any remaining pretense of partnership or dignity is stripped away. Hendrik, for all his monstrous faults, had a shared history with you. There was a human, however twisted, connection. With Rowe, there is nothing. He is your owner. His gaze is cold, appraising, and utterly devoid of empathy. He looks at you and sees only profit. He moves you into his lodgings, which are adjacent to where he keeps his animals. Your new home is a small, damp room that smells of hay, sawdust, and the musky scent of caged creatures. You can hear them at night, the growl of a bear, the chattering of monkeys, the rustle of a snake. You are now officially part of the menagerie. Rowe's methods are far harsher than Hendrik's. There is no more cajoling, no more false promises of a shared future. There are only commands, delivered in a sharp French you learn to understand through tone and gesture. He keeps you on a short leash, both literally and figuratively. You are often confined, and your food and drink are used as tools to ensure your compliance. The show he creates is even more degrading than the one in London. He exhibits you in a tent at a fair on the outskirts of Paris. The stage is a crude platform, and a collar is sometimes placed around your neck, with a rope leading back to row, emphasizing your status as his possession. He has you walk on all fours. He makes you perform tricks. Like a trained poodle, he barks commands, and you are expected to obey instantly. If you hesitate, you are met with his cold, punishing anger. A little known but chilling aspect of this period is the crossover between the world of animal training and human exhibition. The techniques are all used on your repetition, reward, punishment. The assertion of absolute dominance were the same ones he used on the bears and apes in his collection. In the eyes of the Parisian public and your new master, the line between an exotic human and an intelligent animal was dangerously blurred. Why didn't you run? Where could you go? You don't speak the language. You have no money. You don't know the city. You are a black woman in a white world, intensely visible and incredibly vulnerable. To flee would be to invite starvation or capture. Your cage, as terrible as it is the only shelter you have. The academic debate surrounding this phase of your life centers on the transition from the freak show model of London to the human zoo model of Paris. In London, you are a curiosity, an anomaly. In Paris, under oath, you were presented as a specimen, a representative of a savage race, put on display alongside animals to demonstrate the supposed hierarchy of nature, with the white European, of course, at the top. This shift reflects a hardening of racial attitudes and the increasing use of science to justify colonialism and racism. The crowds in Paris are different from those in London. There's a veneer of fashionable, scientific curiosity. They come with a sense of detached, intellectual superiority. They murmur about your primitive features, discussing you in French as if you weren't there, as if you were a statue or a plant. The leering is still there, but it's mixed with a cold, analytical gaze that is somehow even more dehumanizing. They are not just looking at a spectacle, they are studying a specimen. Rowe is a brutal master, but he is also a shrewd one. He recognizes that your value can be increased if you are seen not just by the common rabble at a fair, but by the intellectual elite of Paris. He begins to seek out a new audience, one that can lend an air of scientific legitimacy to his cruel exhibition. He starts making inquiries, sending invitations to the city's most respected naturalists and doctors. He has heard of a man, a giant in the world of French science, who has a particular interest in classifying the races of mankind, a man who is the head of the National Museum of Natural History, a man named Georges Cuvier. Rose sees an opportunity for a much grander stage, and a much greater profit. He is about to deliver you from the hands of a mere animal trainer into the hands of the high priest of comparative anatomy. And this, you will discover, is a far more dangerous place to be. Rose's ambition pays off. The whispers of the Hottentot Venus reach the ears of the Parisian scientific elite, and just as Rowe had hoped, they pique the interest of the most famous naturalist in all of Europe, Baron Georges Cuvier. Cuvier is a towering figure in the history of science. He is the father of paleontology and comparative anatomy, a brilliant and respected member of the French Academy of Sciences. He is a man who believes the entire natural world can be understood through careful observation, measurement, and classification. He has categorized thousands of animal species, both living and extinct. Now, he hears of a living human specimen that seems to defy easy categorization, a supposed link between man and ape. For Cuvier, you are not a person, you are a scientific puzzle he is desperate to solve. An invitation is extended. Rowe, overjoyed at this elevation in status, eagerly accepts. You are to be taken from the tawdry fairground to the hallowed halls of French science. You are moved from the animal show to the Jardin des Plantes, the botanical garden of Paris that houses the National Museum of Natural History. The Jardin des Plantes is a beautiful place, a carefully curated world of exotic plants and animals from across the French Empire. But for you, it is simply a more elegant prison. You are no longer just Ray West animal. You are now a guest of French science. which is a far more insidious form of captivity. You are no longer exhibited to the paying public in a tent. Instead, you are presented to a select, private audience of scientists. The venue is a cold, sterile lecture hall within the museum. The crowd is smaller, exclusively male, and dressed in the fine dark coats of the educated elite. They don't shout or laugh like the fairground crowds. They observe you in intense, unnerving silence, occasionally taking notes in their leather-bound box. Ro is still there, your handler, but now he takes his cues from a new master Cuvier. Cuvier stands before his colleagues, a man at the height of his intellectual power, and he introduces you. He doesn't use the sensational language of a showman. He uses the precise, detached language of science. He calls you a remarkable specimen, a living representative of what he considers to be the most degraded of all human races. He has recommended you to walk, to turn, to display your body as his colleagues watch. Their faces impassive and clinical. This is, in some ways, more terrifying than the open hostility of the mob. Their silence is a void. Their objective gaze strips you of humanity more completely than any insult. You are no longer an entertainer. You are data. One of the most disturbing and rarely discussed elements of this episode is the direct link between colonialism and the production of scientific knowledge. The scientists at the Jardin des Plantes could only study you because of the vast colonial network that had violently uprooted you from your home and trafficked you across the globe. Your suffering was the raw material for their discoveries. Their scientific papers and theories were built upon a foundation of profound human cruelty. Cuvier is fascinated by you, but he is also frustrated. He wants to study you completely, to take detailed measurements of your entire body, including your genitalia, which he theorizes are as primitive and unique as your buttocks. He pressures you to allow him to conduct a full physical examination, to pose nude for his artists and anatomists. Here, in the face of this ultimate violation, you find a flicker of your old strength. You refuse. You say no. You may be a prisoner, you may be forced to perform, but you will not submit to this final, clinical degradation. You refuse to be stripped naked and treated like a cadaver on a slab. This act of refusal is one of the most powerful and important moments of your life. In the heart of the empire, surrounded by the most powerful scientific minds of the age, you, the powerless savage, assert your will. You draw a line. Your refusal infuriates Cuvier. It is an obstacle to his research, a frustrating assertion of humanity where he only wants to see biology. He cannot force you, not without causing a scandal that could tarnish his reputation, so he must wait. He writes in his notes about your stubbornness and lack of modesty, framing your act of self-preservation as a character flaw. The debate among historians here is poignant. Was your refusal an act of calculated defiance, or was it a simple, instinctual reaction of shame and fear? It was likely both. It was the desperate cry of a person trying to maintain the last shred of privacy and dignity in a world that was determined to take everything. This note echoes through history, a testament to your enduring spirit in the face of overwhelming pressure. Your time at the Jardin des Plantes establishes you as a scientific celebrity. You are no longer just a fairground freak. You are now a subject of serious academic inquiry. But this legitimacy does not bring you better treatment. It only deepens your objectification. You have been transferred from a cage made of canvas and rope to one made of theory and classification. And in this new cage, the most powerful scientist in France is watching you, waiting, with the cold patience of an anatomist, for the day when your body will finally yield all its secrets to his scalpel. Your refusal to be fully examined by Cuvier and his team is a stalemate. You have drawn a line. And for now, they cannot cross it. But Cuvier is a patient man, a scientist who believes that all natural objects will eventually yield their secrets. If he cannot have your living body, he will settle for the next best thing, a perfect, two-dimensional record of it. Rao is instructed to bring you to a studio. It's not a grand artist's salon, but a functional, cold room, likely within the museum complex. Here you meet the men with the charcoal and the canvases. They are scientific illustrators, men trained not to capture emotional character, but to render anatomical detail with unsparing precision. You are told to pose. You are still not forced to be completely nude, but the skin-colored garment you wear is arranged and rearranged to reveal as much of your form as possible. The artists work under Cuvier's direct supervision. He circles you like a predator, pointing out features he wants them to emphasize. Note the curvature of the spine. He might say in French, capture the precise shape of the clavicle. The proportions are extraordinary. He is not speaking to you. He is speaking about you, dissecting you with his words as his artists dissect you with their gaze. The experience is chilling. You are forced to stand still for hours, holding uncomfortable poses, while men you do not know stare at you, their eyes tracing every curve and line of your body. The only sounds are the scratching of charcoal on paper and Cuvier's low, cynical commentary. This is the origin of the now infamous scientific portraits of you. These images, which still exist today, are haunting artifacts of this process. They are not portraits in the traditional sense. There is no attempt to capture your personality, your sadness, or your strength. Your face is often turned to the side, in profile, like a coin or a specimen. The focus is entirely on your physique. They are called technical documents, the visual equivalent of an autopsy report performed on a living person. A little-known fact is the diversity of artists who drew you. While the most famous images are the stark, scientific ones commissioned by Cuvier, you were also a subject for more mainstream artists, who depicted you in a more romanticized, exotic style. These different artistic interpretations show how you were being consumed by various aspects of French culture simultaneously as a scientific specimen, a romantic noble savage, and a lurid sideshow attraction. You are being permanently recorded. Your body turned into an image that will be used to prove the theories of men like Cuvier. He would later use these very drawings in his lectures and publications to argue for his racial hierarchy. He would point to your features as evidence of the Khoikhoi people's supposed proximity to apes, using your body to justify the racist ideologies that underpinned European colonialism. You are being made into a pillar of scientific racism, forced to provide the proof for your own dehumanization. The historical debate here is subtle but important. To what extent were these scientific illustrators and Cuvier himself aware of their own biases? Cuvier would have claimed to be a pure empiricist, an objective observer simply recording the facts of nature. However, modern historians of science argue that his observations were completely filtered through his preconceived notions of racial hierarchy. He wasn't discovering difference, he was looking for it and interpreting everything he saw as confirmation of his existing beliefs. He saw what he wanted to see. During these long, grueling sessions, you retreat inside yourself. You have become practiced at this emotional self-preservation. You stare at a spot on the wall, letting your mind drift away. You think of the Gamtoos Valley. You try to remember the taste of fresh water from the river, the warmth of the fire, the sound of your own language spoken with love. These memories are your only sanctuary. They are the only part of you that these men cannot measure, draw, or colonize. The drawings are completed. Cuvier studies them with satisfaction. He now has his permanent record. He can reproduce them, circulate them among his colleagues, use them to build his arguments. He has successfully translated your living, breathing, resisting body into a set of manageable, two-dimensional facts that fit his theories. For you, the experience is another profound violation. You have been seen, recorded, and catalogued. A part of you has been stolen and affixed to paper, destined to be used for purposes you can't understand but can feel are malevolent. You leave the studio feeling emptier, more spectral than before. You are becoming a ghost in your own life, while your image, a distorted, unweaponized version of you, is beginning to take on a life of its own in the halls of European science. Having captured your image, Cuvier's desire for data remains unsated. The drawings are static. He needs dynamic, quantifiable information. He needs numbers. He now subjects you to the most impersonal and perhaps the most bizarre form of scientific scrutiny you have yet endured: anthropometry, the measurement of man. You are brought back to the lecture hall, or perhaps a laboratory within the museum. This time, instead of artists with charcoal, you face a group of scientists armed with calipers, measuring tapes, and strange brass instruments you've never seen before. They are phrenologists, quantiometrists, and comparative anatomists, the leading practitioners of the burgeoning, and now thoroughly debunked, race sciences. Cuvier is in charge, directing the proceedings with an air of detached authority. Ray stands by, ready to compel your obedience. The process begins. They treat your body like a piece of architecture, a problem to be solved with mathematics. A pair of cold metal calipers is pressed against your skull. A man reads out a number. Someone else writes it down in a ledger. They measure the width of your head, the length of your jaw, the distance between your eyes. They are trying to find a quantifiable, numerical proof of your intellectual inferiority. The pseudoscience of phrenology, popular at the time, held that the shape and bumps on the skull corresponded to specific mental faculties and character traits. Your skull, they believed, held the secret to your savagery. They move on to the rest of your body. A measuring tape is wrapped around your arms, your waist, your hips. Every part of you is reduced to a set of figures. The focus, inevitably, returns to your buttocks. They measure them with an almost comical intensity, recording their width, their projection, their circumference. You are forced to stand, sit, and bend over as they meticulously document the feature that has made you a celebrity and a prisoner. This process is profoundly alienating. It is an act of extreme objectification performed under the guise of detached, objective science. There is no pretense of interaction. No one speaks to you. They speak about you, reading out numbers. You are not a person in the room, you are the object under investigation. A particularly absurd and little-known detail of 19th century anthropometry was the sheer variety of obsessive measurements taken. Scientists would measure everything from finger length to nostril width, all in a desperate search for a racial type. They created complex formulas and indexes, believing that these numbers could definitively place every human group on a linear scale from savage to civilized. It was a massive, data-driven project dedicated to confirming their own prejudices. You endure it. You stand where they tell you to stand. You turn when they tell you to turn. You have become numb to this kind of violation. It is intrusive. It is humiliating. But it is not the same raw violation as the leering crowds or the demand to pose nude. This is a cold, sterile process. It is the violation of the clinic, not the alleyway. The historical debate around this scene is crucial. Earlier historians might have presented Cuvier and his colleagues as pioneers, albeit flawed ones, working with the best knowledge of their time. However, contemporary scholarship is much harsher. It frames these scientists as active architects of scientific racism. They weren't just men of their time, they were the ones who created the intellectual framework for the time. They built the ideological weapons that were used to justify slavery, colonialism, and genocide. The measurements they took of your body were not neutral data points, they were ammunition. As the calipers press against your skin, you feel a profound sense of dissociation. This body they are measuring, does it even belong to you anymore? It has been claimed by showmen, by lawyers, by priests, and now by scientists. It has been costumed, performed, sold, and drawn. Now it is being quantified. The year that is Saartjie, the girl from the Gamtoos Valley, feels like a distant memory, a ghost inhabiting a machine that everyone else is fighting to control. When they are finally finished, the scientists confer in low voices, looking over their pages of numbers. They seem pleased. They have their data. They have captured you in a web of measurements, reducing the messy, complex reality of your existence to a neat column of figures. They believe they have understood you. You are dismissed, led away by Roe. You have provided another service to science. You have no idea that these numbers, these cold, hard figures taken from your body, will be published in academic journals and cited in learned societies for decades to come. They will become part of the foundation of a science designed to prove that you are less than human. The men with the calipers have finished their work, but the damage they have inflicted will echo for more than a century. The final act of your scientific immortalization is perhaps the most intimate and the most insidious. After the drawings and the measurements, Cuvier wants one more artifact. He wants a perfect, three-dimensional replica of your body, something he can keep in the museum long after you are gone. He wants to make a life cast. The process is a claustrophobic ordeal. You are taken to a workshop, a place that smells of wet clay and plaster. You are instructed to undress, again wearing the minimal, skin-tight garment. Your skin is covered in a greasy substance, a release agent to prevent the plaster from sticking. Then, the plaster is applied. It is wet and heavy, slapped onto your body in thick layers by the workshop technicians. It is cold at first, but then it begins to warm up as it sets. An unnerving, chemical heat. They cover your torso, your back, your limbs. The weight of it is immense. You have to stand perfectly still, breathing shallowly, as this heavy, wet shell encases you. The most terrifying part is when they cast your head. They leave small tubes in your nostrils so you can breathe, but otherwise, you are completely covered. You are plunged into darkness and silence. The only sound the muffled beating of your own heart. The plaster presses in, taking an impression of every feature. For those long minutes, you are entombed, unable to see or speak, a prisoner inside a hardening sarcophagus. It is a taste of being buried alive. This practice of making life casts of indigenous people was a common, if morbid, feature of 19th century anthropology. Museums across Europe and America built up vast collections of these plaster bodies. They were seen as the most authentic way to capture a racial type. The permanent 3D snapshot. A lesser-known fact is that the process could be dangerous. The plaster was heavy, the fumes could be toxic, and if anything went wrong, the subject could be trapped or even suffocate. Your submission to this was an act of considerable, unaccompanied bravery. Finally, the plaster has set. The technicians carefully cut the mold off your body in sections. As they pull the last piece away, you gasp for air, light flooding your vision. You are exhausted, shivering, and covered in grime, but you are free of the cast. The mold is then taken away to be reassembled. From it, they will pour a plaster positive, a perfect white statue of your body. This statue will become one of the museum's prized possessions. It will stand in a glass case for over a century, a silent, pale ghost representing the Hottentot Venus. It is the ultimate objectification, your living form turned into an inanimate museum object, a piece of institutional property. The historical debate around these life casts is intense. Are they valuable anthropological data, as their creators claimed, or are they grotesque symbols of colonial violence? Most contemporary scholars argue for the latter. They contend that the act of casting was an assertion of power, a way for the West to collect and own the bodies of the people it was colonizing. The casts were not neutral representations, they were trophies. Cuvier now has everything he could want from you while you are alive. He has the drawings, the measurements, and now, a perfect three-dimensional copy. He has successfully translated you into a set of scientific artifacts that he can control, study, and display. You never see the final statue. Your role in its creation is over, but its existence changes something. It feels like a part of your soul has been captured, frozen in white plaster. While you are still walking and breathing, a version of you is already dead, already a museum piece. This process marks the end of your intensive study by the scientific community. Cuvier and his colleagues have what they need. Seeing that the interest of the scientific elite has peaked, loses interest in this prestigious but less profitable venture. He drags you back into the world of commercial exhibition. But the experience has left its mark on you. The constant probing, measuring, and molding has taken a toll. You have been treated as an object for so long that you are starting to feel like one. The fire of defiance that made you say no to Cuvier's initial demands has been banked, smothered under layers of plaster and humiliation. You are tired, so incredibly tired. The men of science have taken what they wanted, and now they are done with you. You are tossed back into the grimy world of the fairground, a little more broken than before. The return to the fairground circuit is a bleak homecoming. You have been to the palaces of science. You have been the talk of the Parisian elite. And now you are back in the modern noise, under the thumb of the animal trainer. The glamour, such as it was, has faded completely, leaving only the grim reality of your existence. Your health, which has been fragile since you arrived in Europe, begins a steep and rapid decline. The European climate, so different from the dry warmth of your homeland, is a constant assault on your system. The Parisian winters are dampened by chillingly cold. The thin costumes you are forced to wear offer no protection. You develop a persistent, rattling cough that will not go away. Your diet is poor, consisting of cheap, starchy foods, whatever road deigns to provide. There is none of the nutrient-rich food of your youth: the milk, the meat, the wild plants and roots. You are slowly being starved of the very things your body needs to survive. Malnutrition weakens your immune system, leaving you vulnerable to the diseases that fester in the city's crowded, unsanitary conditions. And then there is the alcohol. It started in London with Hendry. A swig of brandy to numb the nerves before a show. And a row. It has become a constant companion. It is your medicine, your anesthetic, your only escape from the relentless misery of your days and the cold loneliness of your nights. Well, likely encourages it. A drunken, dependent performer is an easily controlled one. The alcohol provides a temporary warmth, a brief, blurry respite, but it is a poison that is ravaging your body, particularly your liver and kidneys. The psychological toll is inseparable from the physical one. The constant humiliation, the loss of autonomy, the profound and unending homesickness, it all manifests in your body. You are consumed by what you would now call a deep depression. There is no hope on your horizon. The promise of returning home has evaporated completely. You are trapped, and you know it. This sense of utter hopelessness is a disease in itself, weakening your will to live, making you more susceptible to the illnesses that are attacking your body. A small but tragic detail that is often overlooked is the social isolation. In London, you had the brief, if complicated, intervention of the abolitionists. In Paris, you have no one. You are utterly alone, surrounded by people who see you as an animal or an object. You have no friend to talk to, no one who speaks your language, no shoulder to cry on. The loneliness is a physical presence, a cold weight in your chest. Your body, the very thing that has been the source of your fame and your suffering, begins to betray you. You lose weight. Your skin, once the color of rich earth, becomes sallow. The cough worsens. You are often feverish. Your performances become listless. You move through the motions, a ghost of the already fictional character you were forced to play. The crowds can see you are unwell. Your value as a spectacle begins to decline as your health fails. Historians who have studied your medical history, based on the scant evidence available, continue to debate the exact cause of your rapid decline. The final diagnosis would be an inflammatory and eruptive malady, but the contributing factors are clear. It was a perfect storm of exposure, malnutrition, alcoholism, and infectious disease like tuberculosis or pneumonia, all layered on top of profound psychological trauma. You are, in essence, dying of a broken heart, a broken spirit, and a broken body. Romeo, seeing his asset deteriorating, becomes more frustrated and cruel. An unhealthy animal is a bad investment. He likely does little to procure proper medical care for you. Why would he in his cold calculation? Your value is nearly exhausted. You are caught in a downward spiral. The sicker you get, the less you earn. The less you earn, the worse your living conditions become. The worse your living conditions, the sicker you get. The body that Europe was so obsessed with, the body they drew, measured, and cursed, is now breaking down. It is failing under the immense weight of the cruelty it has been forced to endure. The winter of 1815 is approaching, and it will be a particularly cold one. You are facing it with no warmth, no comfort, and no hope. The end is drawing near. The end comes in a squalid room on a back street of Paris. The year is 1815. The city is celebrating the final downfall of Napoleon and the restoration of the monarchy. But these grand historical events mean nothing to you. Your world has shrunk to the four walls of this cold, damp room and the landscape of your own pain. Roe has all but abandoned you. You are no longer profitable. Just a second dying liability. You are alone. The fever that has been racking your body now burns unchecked. You are delirious, drifting in and out of consciousness. In your lucid moments, the weight of your reality is crushing. You are thousands of miles from the sun-baked earth of your home, dying in the grey chill of a foreign city where no one knows your real name or the story of the girl you once were. In these final hours, does your mind drift back to the Gamtoos West Valley? Do you see the river, the kettle, the face of your mother? Do you hear the clicking sounds of your language? A lullaby from a life that seems more like a dream than a memory. Perhaps these visions are a small mercy, a final, fleeting escape from the miserable present. You die on December 29. The official cause of death is listed as an inflammatory and disruptive malady, a vague 19th century term that could mean anything from smallpox to pleurisy or pneumonia, likely complicated by alcoholism and syphilis, which some accounts claim you had contracted. You were just 26 years old. Your lonely death should have been the end of the story. It should have been the final, tragic chapter of a life defined by exploitation. But it wasn't, for the men of science. Your death was not an end, but an opportunity. Georges Cuvier had been waiting for this moment. He had been frustrated by your refusal to allow a full examination of your body in life. No, in death, you could no longer refuse. Your body, which you had fought to protect, was now helpless. He swoops him with chilling speed, before your body is even cold. He uses his immense influence as a leading figure in the French scientific establishment to lay claim to your remains. He argues that your corpse is not the property of a relative or to be given a simple burial. It is, he insists, an object of immense scientific value that must be preserved for research. He petitions the authorities, and permission is granted with little hesitation. The body of the Hottentot Venus is officially handed over to the National Museum of Natural History. A little known but grotesque detail is the legal argument Cuvier used. He essentially claimed your body for science in the same way an art museum might claim a national treasure. He successfully argued that your anatomy was so unique, so important for the progress of human knowledge, that it belonged to the French nation. Your physical remains were nationalized. This moment is a focal point for intense historical and ethical debate. Was Cuvier's action a ghoulish act of grave robbing driven by morbid curiosity and racial prejudice, or was it, in the context of the time, a logical, if cold, step for a scientist dedicated to anatomical research? Most modern perspectives condemn it unequivocally. It was the ultimate act of colonial possession, the final assertion of power over your body, extending even beyond death. He could not own your spirit, so he made sure to own your bones. Your death is not a moment for mourning or quiet dignity. It is the trigger for a new, posthumous chapter of violation. The shaman Roe is gone. Hendrik Caesarus is a distant memory. But the man with the scalpel has taken their place. He is the final and most powerful of all your captors. You died alone in a cold room, but your body is immediately seized, tagged, and transported to the very museum where you were once exhibited. The journey you began in the Gamtoos West Valley has ended on a cold slab in a Parisian laboratory. You have escaped the misery of your life only to enter the horror of your afterlife. The winter of your life has ended. But the winter of your body's desecration is just beginning. Your body, now the property of the French state, is laid out on a marble slab in Cuvier's Anatomy Theatre. The indignities you suffered in life are about to be dwarfed by what happens to you in death. For Cuvier, this is the moment of triumph he has been patiently awaiting. Your final no has been rendered moot. He can now answer all the questions your living body refused to yield. He schedules a public dissection. This is not a private, solemn affair. It is a performance. He invites his colleagues from the Academy of Sciences, his students, and other members of the Parisian intellectual elite. The Anatomy Theatre is filled with curious, black-clad men, eager to witness the great Cuvier reveal the secrets of the savage. Cuvier stands before your body, scalpel in hand. He is not a mourner or a respectful physician. He is a showman of science, and this is his grand finale. He begins his lecture. His voice resonating in the cold, tiered room, he speaks of your primitive features, your supposed links to the animal kingdom. Your body is his visual aid, the ultimate proof of his racist theories. He begins the dissection. With methodical precision, he cuts into your skin. He removes your organs one by one, holding them up for the audience to see, commenting on their size, shape, and supposed peculiarities. He pays special attention to your genitalia, which he had been so obsessed with in your life. He dissects them with particular care, claiming to find features that, in his biased view, link you more closely to apes than to European humans. His findings are, of course, a complete fabrication, a projection of his own prejudices onto your anatomy. What he is discovering is nothing more than normal human variation, interpreted through a grotesquely racist lens. He also dissects your brain. He weighs it, measures it, and declares it to be small. Further proof of your intellectual inferiority. It is a classic move of 19th century race science, which consistently and falsely equated brain size with intelligence. The entire procedure is a spectacle of scientific violence. It is an autopsy not to determine the cause of death, but to confirm a pre-existing ideological bias. Each cut of the scalpel is an act of posthumous violation, a final desecration of the body you fought to protect. A little-known but powerful counter-narrative to this event exists in the form of a poem written decades later by the South African poet Diana Ferris, titled "I've Come to Take You Home." The poem gives you a voice, speaking directly to Cuvier and the scientists, condemning their actions and promising your eventual return. It highlights the enduring emotional and cultural impact of this dissection, an event that has never been forgotten by the people you came from. The historical debate here centers on the legacy of Cuvier's work. For a long time, he was celebrated as a founding father of modern biology. His work on your body was seen as a key, if controversial, part of his research. Today, however, historians of science are re-evaluating his entire legacy. They argue that his work on human racial classification was not just a minor, regrettable flaw, but a central and toxic part of his worldview that did immense harm. His dissection of your body is now seen as a textbook example of scientific racism, where the power and prestige of science were used to dehumanize and oppress. When the dissection is over, your body lies in pieces on the slab. Cuvier has what he wants. He has proven his theories to his colleagues. He has satisfied his morbid curiosity. But he is not done with you yet. The component parts of your body are too valuable to be discarded or given a proper burial. They must be preserved for posterity, for future generations of scientists to study and learn from. The show is over, but the work of turning you into a permanent museum exhibit is about to begin. The man with the scalpel has finished his performance, and now the technicians with the preservation jars will take his place. Your body has been publicly dismantled, and now its pieces will be curated. The dissection is complete, but the desecration continues. Cuvier, having satisfied his intellectual curiosity, now supervises the final stage of your transformation from a human being into a permanent collection of museum artifacts. He selects the parts of you he deems most scientifically valuable for preservation. First, he carefully removes your brain and your genitalia. These are the organs he believes most clearly demonstrate your otherness. They are placed into specimen jars filled with alcohol, a preserving fluid that will keep the tissue from decaying. They are sealed and labeled. No longer parts of a person, but isolated biological samples, catalogued and ready for study. The labels will not say Saartjie. They will refer to you by your exhibition name and as a specimen of your race. Next, your skeleton. Your flesh is meticulously boiled and scraped away from your bones. This is a common anatomical practice, but a gruesome one nonetheless. The skeleton that gave your body its form, that carried you from the GI into Oise Valley to the heart of Paris, is cleaned and bleached until it is sterile and white. It is then carefully articulated, wired together piece by piece, and mounted on a stand in a lifelike pose. Your bones, which should have been returned to the earth, are now prepared for permanent display. But Cuvier isn't satisfied with just the internal structure. He wants the external form as well. He still has the plaster mold that was made of your body while you were alive. He now uses it to cast the famous statue, the pale white ghost that will become the centerpiece of the exhibit. This life cast, your skeleton, and the jars containing your organs will form a triptych of objectification, displaying you inside and out. The creation of these artifacts is a chillingly bureaucratic process. Each piece is given an acquisition number. It is entered into the museum's official ledger. A file is created. Your humanity is systematically erased and replaced by the cold, orderly process of museum collection management. You are now, officially and for the foreseeable future, the property of the Museum National d'Histoire Naturelle. A little known and macabre fact is what happened to the rest of you. The parts of your body that Cuvier did not deem worthy of preservation, the muscles, the skin, the viscera, were likely unceremoniously discarded, perhaps sold for parts to lesser medical schools or simply incinerated. There was no funeral, no burial, no final rites. The bulk of your physical self was treated as biological waste. This process of creating and curating human remains was central to the mission of 19th century museums. They saw themselves as archives of the natural world, and that included the races of mankind. The collection of human skeletons and body parts from colonized peoples was a massive, global enterprise. Your case is the most famous, but you are one of thousands whose remains ended up in the drawers and on the shelves of Western institutions, stolen from their communities and denied a proper resting place. The ethical and historical debate on this topic is now at the forefront of museum studies. For over a century, museums defended these collections as invaluable resources for scientific research. They argued that repatriation would be a loss to science. However, indigenous communities and post-colonial scholars have powerfully challenged this view. They argue that these remains are not specimens, but ancestors. They are stolen people, not scientific objects, and their continued presence in museums is an open wound, the symbol of colonial violence that has never been healed. The demand for their return is a demand for justice, for the restoration of dignity, and for the right of a people to bury their own dead. Cuvier writes up his findings in a formal report to the Academy of Sciences. It is a dry, academic text, but it is one of the foundational documents of scientific racism. He describes your anatomy in detail, drawing his prejudiced conclusions. He writes with the serene confidence of a man who believes he is contributing to the grand project of human knowledge. He has no inkling that, 2 centuries later, his report will be read as a testament not to his genius, but to his profound and cruel lack of it. The jars are sealed. The skeleton is mounted. The plaster cast is polished. The labels are written. The collection is complete. All the pieces are now ready to be assembled into an exhibit that will shock, fascinate, and educate the Parisian public for more than a century and a half. For the next 150 years, you are a ghost in a glass case. Cuvier assembles the exhibit in what would eventually become the Musée d'El Homme, the Museum of Man in Paris. It is a prime location, a place visited by school children, tourists, and scholars. And there you are, a silent, central feature of the anthropology wing. The display is stark and clinical. In the center stands the white plastic house, the statue made from the mold of your living body. It isn't hairy, lifeless replica, capturing your form but none of your humanity. Beside it stands your actual skeleton, articulated and mounted, a stark white framework of bone, and on a shelf nearby are the glass jars, their murky contents floating in alcohol, your brain and other organs. It is a complete, multi-part objectification, presenting you as a collection of anatomical features. A small plaque provides the context. It identifies you as the Hottentot Venus, a specimen of the Bushman race of southern Africa. The language is detached and scientific, but the message is clear: you are here to be studied as an example of a primitive human type. You are a lesson in racial hierarchy, a visual aid for the story of European superiority. For generations of French citizens and visitors from around the world, this is how they learn about the Khoikhoi people. They don't learn about your culture, your language, your complex social systems. They learn about your STE at a PGIA. They learn about Cuvier's biased measurements. Your entire existence, and that of your people, is reduced to this single, sexualized, and racialized exhibit. You become a cultural touchstone, a reference point in art, literature, and science, but you are always seen through the lens of Cuvier's creation. You are a symbol, but not of your own story. You are a symbol of the exotic, the primitive, the other. A little-known aspect of your long exhibition is how the display changed over time. In the 19th century, you were a star attraction, a centerpiece of race science. By the mid-20th century, as scientific racism fell out of favor after the horrors of World War II, your exhibit became more of an embarrassment. Museum curators became increasingly uncomfortable with the overt racism of the display. Yet, you remained. You were too famous, too important a part of the museum's history to simply remove. You were just quietly moved to a less prominent corner, a dusty relic of a bygone era of science. The ethical debate over the display of human remains in museums raged throughout the 20th century. Initially, the argument was purely scientific. Curators argued they had a duty to preserve these specimens for research. But by the 1972, a new and powerful argument emerged, driven by indigenous rights movements around the world. The argument was no longer about science, it was about human rights. Activists and scholars began to demand the repatriation of ancestral remains, arguing that it was a fundamental matter of dignity and justice. Your case became a central, symbolic battleground in this debate. You were arguably the most famous undead person in any museum in the world. Your story was so well documented, the injustice so blatant, that you became the poster child for the repatriation movement. If Saartjie Baartman could not be sent home, then no one could. But for decades, the French authorities refused. They hid behind a legal principle called inalienability, which states that objects in national collections are the property of the French state and cannot be given away. They argued that your remains were not a person, but a protected national heritage item. It was a bizarre and cruel legal trap. The very act of objectifying you had given the state the legal grounds to keep you objectified forever. And so you waited. Through 2 world wars, through the rise and fall of empires, through the dawn of the atomic age and the space race. You stood silently in your glass case. The world outside changed beyond recognition, but your prison remained the same. You were a ghost haunting the conscience of a nation, a silent witness to a crime that was still ongoing. The world knew you as a specimen, a statue, an exhibit. But far away, in the land of your birth, the memory of you as a person was being kept alive, and a new generation was about to begin the fight to finally bring you home. As the 20th century nears its end, a new wind blows from the south. It carries with it the echoes of your name, not the cruel stage name given to you by Europe, but your real name, Saartjie. The world that had forgotten you as a person is about to be reminded. The change begins in your homeland, South Africa, for decades locked in the brutal grip of apartheid, a system of racial segregation that was the direct ideological descendant of the theories of men like Cuvier, is undergoing a seismic transformation. In 1994, the system is dismantled. Nelson Mandela, a man imprisoned for 27 years for fighting for freedom, becomes the first democratically elected president of a new, free South Africa. This new nation begins a powerful and painful process of confronting its past. It looks back at the centuries of colonial oppression and racial injustice, and in looking back, it rediscovers your story. You are no longer just a historical footnote. You become a potent national symbol. You are the embodiment of the suffering of the Khoikhoi people, the original inhabitants of the land. You are the ultimate symbol of the exploitation of black women under colonialism. Your story, once used by Europe to justify racism, is now reclaimed by South Africa as a story of resistance and a call for justice. The call to bring you home begins as a whisper among Khoikhoi activists and academics. They have not forgotten you. For them, your unburied, displayed body in a foreign museum is an open wound, a profound and ongoing insult to their ancestors and their culture. An unburied soul, in many African belief systems, cannot rest. Your spirit is seen as wandering, trapped between worlds, waiting to be brought home. The whisper grows into a roar. The movement gains traction, led by poets, historians, and community leaders. One of the key figures is the poet Diana Ferras. In 1998, while visiting the Netherlands, she writes a poem that becomes the anthem of the campaign. It is titled "I Have Come to Take You Home." In the poem, she speaks directly to you, acknowledging your pain and promising your return. The poem is read in the South African Parliament. It is published in newspapers, and it galvanizes public opinion both in South Africa and internationally. It transforms a political issue into a deeply emotional, human one. A little-known fact about the early stages of the campaign is the role of genetic science. Proponents of your return use DNA evidence to prove a direct ancestral link between modern-day Khoikhoi communities and you, strengthening their moral and legal claim. The very science that was once used to dehumanize you was now being used to reclaim you and prove your lineage. The official campaign begins. The South African government, led by the Khoikhoi activists who now have the ear of the new democratic leadership, formally petitions the French government for the repatriation of your remains. The French response is initially dismissive and bureaucratic. They fall back on their old legal argument, the principle of inalienability. Your remains, they insist, are part of France's national scientific heritage. They are an object, not a person, and therefore cannot be returned. They fear that returning you would set a precedent, opening the floodgates to thousands of similar claims from other countries for artifacts and remains held in French museums. This sets the stage for a prolonged and heated diplomatic and public relations battle. The South African contingent argues from a position of human rights and moral justice. The French museum establishment argues from a position of law and scientific preservation. The debate plays out in newspapers, academic conferences, and government chambers. Historians are still debating the motivations behind the fierce French resistance. Was it purely a legal and bureaucratic concern about setting a precedent, or was it something deeper? Some argue it was a form of post-colonial arrogance, a reluctance to admit wrongdoing or to relinquish the trophies of their imperial past. Others suggest it was a genuine, if misguided, conflict within the French intellectual community about the role of museums and the ownership of history. For years, the answer from Paris is a firm no, but the pressure is mounting. The story has gained international attention. The image of a modern, democratic France clinging to the abused remains of a 19th century woman is not a good look. The ghost in the glass case is becoming a serious diplomatic embarrassment. The calls for your return are no longer just whispers from the South. They are a global chorus demanding that France finally do the right thing. The stalemate persists for years. The French government, caught between the unyielding museum lobby and mounting international pressure, digs in its heels. It seems your ghost is destined to remain captive in Paris, but the campaign for your return has a powerful, almost mythical, champion on its side, Nelson Mandela. Mandela, or Madiba as he is affectionately known, is more than just a political leader. He is a global icon of reconciliation, justice, and the power of forgiveness. When he speaks, the world listens, and he has taken a personal interest in your case. Your story resonates deeply with him. It is the story of his people, of a continent's suffering, and of the enduring struggle for dignity. He sees your repatriation not as a small diplomatic issue, but as a crucial act of national and spiritual healing for South Africa. It is a necessary step in closing a painful chapter of his country's history. He believes that the new South Africa cannot truly be free until all its people, including those stolen by history, are brought home to rest. In the late 1990s, President Mandela makes a direct, personal appeal to the President of France, Jacques Chirac. This is no longer just a petition from activists or a formal request from diplomats. This is a plea from one head of state to another, from one of the most respected human beings on the planet. This move elevates the issue to the highest possible level. Mandela's involvement transforms the debate. It is no longer about museum policy or legal precedent. It is about a fundamental moral obligation. Confront a nation that prides itself on the principles of liberty. Say no to Nelson Mandela. Even with Mandela's immense moral authority, the French bureaucracy holds firm. The legal obstacle of inalienability seems insurmountable. To return your remains, the French government would need to pass a specific law, an act of parliament that would override the existing heritage codes. This is a huge political and legal hurdle. The debate rages within the French government. On one side are the traditionalists in the cultural ministry and the museum world, who scream about the sanctity of national collections. On the other side are the diplomats in the foreign ministry, who see the damage this is doing to France's international reputation and its relationship with the new South Africa. A little-known detail of this political struggle is the impassioned speech given by the French Senator Nicolas About, who championed the bill for your return. He argued powerfully before the French Senate that the principle of inalienability was designed to protect art, not to hold human remains hostage. There is no offense to the memory of this woman, he declared, greater than to allow her to remain an object in a museum collection. His advocacy was crucial in turning the tide of opinion within the French political class. The turning point finally comes in the early 2000s. The French government, under continued pressure and recognizing the moral weight of Mandela's request, finally relents. They decide to draft a special law, a one-time exception that will authorize the return of your remains to South Africa. The historical debate here concerns the reason for the change of heart. Was it a genuine moral awakening, or was it a pragmatic political calculation? The answer is likely a bit of both. The tireless work of activists and the moral force of Mandela's appeal had genuinely shifted perceptions. At the same time, the French government realized that the political cost of keeping you was now far greater than the cost of letting you go. It was an act of conscience, but also an act of astute political damage control. In 2002, the French National Assembly passes the law. After a final, emotional debate, the vote is unanimous. After almost 2 centuries of captivity, after years of diplomatic struggle, the legal path is finally clear. The law is signed. The ghost in the glass case is, at last, legally free to go home. The request of a president, backed by the spirit of his nation, has finally broken through the walls of the museum. The passing of the law is a monumental victory, but the journey home is not yet over. The bureaucracy of repatriation is slow and deliberate. The ghost in the glass case must be carefully, respectfully decommissioned. The first step is a quiet, somber ceremony at the Musée de l'Homme. The exhibit is dismantled. The glass case is removed. Your skeleton, the plastic cast, and the jars containing your organs are taken from public view for the very last time. For over 150 years, They had been objects of public display. Now, they are finally being treated as the remains of a human being. A team of South African and French officials, including curators and Khoikhoi representatives, oversees the process. It is a moment thick with emotion. For the French curators, it is the end of a long and uncomfortable chapter in their museum's history. For the South African delegation, it is the beginning of the final act of healing. They are not just collecting museum artifacts, they are retrieving an ancestor. The remains are carefully packed. Your articulated skeleton is laid to rest in a specially prepared casket. The plaster cast, that pale white echo of your living body, is also created. There is some debate about what to do with the cast, as it is not human remains, but a historical artifact. It is decided it will travel with you. Its final fate to be determined back in South Africa. The jars containing your brain and other organs, the most intimate and violated parts of you, are handled with particular reverence and placed inside the casket. A little known but poignant detail of the handover ceremony was the burning of traditional Khoikhoi codes. Members of the South African delegation performed a cleansing ritual within the museum, using the smoke of sacred plants to purify the space and to call your spirit to begin its journey home. It was a powerful act of reclaiming sacred ground, replacing the cold science of Khoikhoi with the ancient spirituality of your people. On April 29, a formal handover ceremony is held. The South African ambassador to France officially receives the casket. Speeches are made. The French Minister of Research expresses deep regret for the way you were treated. A carefully worded statement that stops short of a full apology but acknowledges the historical injustice. The South African representatives speak of justice, of dignity, and of bringing a daughter of their soil home to rest. Your casket, draped in the new flag of a democratic South Africa, is carried out of the museum. You left your homeland on a cramped merchant ship, treated as cargo. You return on a modern airplane, in a casket, treated with the dignity of a visiting head of state. The flight to South Africa is long, a journey back across the same ocean that carried you away into misery. It's a flight reversing the course of history, a flight from the cold north back to the warm south. The airplane itself is a symbol of how much the world has changed since you were forced onto that rocking sailing ship. The historical significance of this journey cannot be overstated. It is one of the most important and high-profile repatriations of human remains in history. It sets a powerful precedent, sending a message to museums all over the world that the era of collecting and displaying human trophies from other cultures is over. It is a landmark victory for indigenous rights and a testament to the power of persistent, peaceful activism. As the plane descends towards Cape Town, the familiar shape of Table Mountain comes into view, the very last piece of Africa you saw as you sailed away to centuries ago. Now, it is the first thing you see on your return. The long, cold exile is finally over. The ghost that haunted the halls of Paris is now an ancestor, flying home. The journey has been impossibly long, but you are about to touch the earth of your homeland once more. Your return is not a quiet affair. When the plane lands in Cape Town, you are met with a ceremony of state. Dignitaries, politicians, and Khoikhoi leaders are there to receive you. Your casket, draped in the nation's colors, is carried by an honor guard. There are cameras, speeches, and tears. The nation that is born from the ashes of the system that first destroyed your life now welcomes you home as a founding mother, a revered ancestor. Then begins the final leg of your journey. You travel by road, a slow procession heading east, away from the city and back towards the countryside of your birth. The landscape transforms. The manicured suburbs give way to rugged mountains and wide, open plains. You see the red earth again, the scrubby, fragrant fynbos. It's the land you knew, the land that has been waiting for you. They have chosen a special place for you. It is a hill near the town of Hanki, in the heart of the Gamtoos River Valley. From this hill, you can look down and see the river snaking through the landscape below. It is the same river you played by as a child. After 200 years of wandering, You have come full circle. The burial is set for August 9. Oudindingo. It is South Africa's National Women's Day, a public holiday that honors the strength and resilience of the nation's women. The choice of date is deeply symbolic. Your return and burial are woven into the very fabric of the new South Africa's identity. You are not just being laid to rest, you are being enthroned in the national consciousness. Thousands of people have gathered. They come from all over the country, from all walks of life. Among them are the direct descendants of your people, the Khoikhoi, dressed in traditional attire. Their faces, full of sorrow and pride, are a living testament to the survival of your kin. The air is thick with the smell of burning impifo, a sacred herb used to cleanse and to communicate with the ancestors. The sounds of traditional songs and the fluid, clicking sounds of the Khoikhoi language fill the air, the very language they tried to beat out of you and reduced to a savage grunt on a London stage. A little known but significant decision was made regarding the plaster cast. That white, ghostly replica of your body, the ultimate symbol of your objectification, is not buried with you. It is decided that it represents your suffering, not your spirit. It will be stored in a museum archive in South Africa, a historical artifact of a painful past. But it will not be allowed to share your final resting place. Your grave is for you, Saartjie, not for the Venus they created. The casket is lowered into the earth. As the soil of your homeland falls upon the lid, a collected sigh of relief and sorrow seems to ripple through the crowd. It is a sound of profound finality, of a wound beginning to close. The ghost of Paris has been laid. The ancestor is at peace. And so you are home. But the debate about your legacy continues. And this is perhaps the most complex part of your story. Historians and cultural critics still argue about how you should be remembered. Should you be seen primarily as a tragic victim, a symbol of the utter brutality of colonialism, or should you be celebrated as a symbol of resistance? A woman who, in the face of unimaginable pressure, still found moments to say no, to assert her will, to protect the last vestiges of her dignity. Some argue that by turning you into a national hero, a symbol for a new political identity, you are being used once again, appropriated for a modern narrative, albeit a positive one. Are you truly free, do you ask? Or have you simply been moved from one glass case to another, more gilded one? It's a question without an easy answer. But as the sun sets over the Gamtoos Valley, casting long shadows across your new grave, perhaps the answer is simpler. You are not a theory, or a symbol, or a debate. You are Saartjie Baartman, a daughter, a woman who loved and lost, who was stolen and broken, and who, after 2 centuries of cold and darkness, has finally been brought home to the warmth of the African sun. And here, on this quiet hill, you can finally rest. And with that, her story finds its end. The long, painful journey is over, and the dust has settled on a quiet hillside by a winding river. The voices of the showmen, the scientists, and the presidents have faded away, leaving only the gentle whisper of the wind through the grass. Now your own journey for tonight is ending. Too, the world of the past begins to dissolve, its sharp edges softening and blurring into the peaceful dark around you. Feel the weight of your own body, safe and warm under a blanket. Listen to the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet and reassuring drumbeat in the silence of your room. The thoughts of the day are beginning to drift, like little boats floating away on a calm, dark sea. There is nothing left to do, nothing to figure out. The river has smoothed into glass. The sky is filled with a soft, deep velvet, and the stars are beginning to appear, one by one, like tiny, distant campfires. Let the quiet hum of the night, the soft sound of a fan, or the silence itself be your lullaby. You are safe, you are comfortable, and you are drifting, gently, peacefully, into the soft and welcoming landscape of your own dreams. The story is over. It is time for rest. The end of the article. Good night.